And now, Good Mike Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
What is up, good people? Happy Saturday to you and welcome to your Winged Eagle Podcast for October 14th, 2023. I'll tell you what, guys, it is weeks like this that make me so glad I'm a content creator on YouTube. These are weeks that people like myself dream about. So much to get into. Not a great week if you are the head of one professional wrestling company and the former head of another. Tony Khan and Vince McMahon did not have great weeks this week, and I think one person might have had a worse week than the other. We're going to talk about those two big situations, and we're going to talk about the phenomenal Smackdown that we saw last night. I was sitting here right here by myself in my studio at 1:30 in the morning, marking the F out for numerous face-offs that we saw on SmackDown, with LA Knight finally getting in Roman Reigns' face, Jade Cargill and Charlotte coming face-to-face backstage, which is what I said weeks ago when Jade was rumored to come to WWE. I said, forget the Bianca confrontation. I want the Charlotte confrontation, and that's the one we got first. Very cool. Plus, we had Cody and Roman coming face-to-face for the first time, I believe, since WrestleMania, correct? John Cena on the show last night as well, and SmackDown, the season premiere of Friday Night SmackDown last night, was all kinds of fun. So we are going to be focusing heavily on that and the review of SmackDown, since this past week we were already here to watch. We were live together watching the Tuesday Night Wars on Tuesday, NXT and AEW. A lot of times on our Saturday podcast, I get into Dynamite results, but we all know the Dynamite results. That's days old, but we are going to be talking about those ratings that came out on Wednesday for the Tuesday Night Wars and how Tony Khan responded to that and how the wrestling world responded to Tony Khan's responses. We're going to talk about that. Then we will talk about a pretty bad week for Vince McMahon, as I believe the groundwork is, as we speak, being laid to push him out of the company. And I think that's great fucking news. We're going to detail everything going on with that. We'll talk about the latest on the rumors of CM Punk coming to WWE. Been a lot of rumors, a lot of teases that he'll show up at Survivor Series in Chicago. WWE's even been dropping hints on television pertaining to CM Punk, but a lot of it might be smoke and no fire, and Punk might not be coming in at all, at least right now. So we'll talk about the latest with CM Punk, and then we will talk about last night's SmackDown, and we will preview this Monday's Raw, which will also be the season premiere. We'll be here for a review on Monday, by the way, and there's a big show stacked up for Monday, and I think we are on the verge pretty much at any time, at any moment now. I think we could see a Damian Priest cash in, and it could very well come this coming Monday night, especially when you combine the fact that Priest has already been teasing it. He's had the Money in the Bank briefcase for a while. They held it off last week, and now with the news of Vince McMahon pretty much not having any say anymore in creative, and the evidence that we've seen on TV, supporting that, with a lot of these people getting wins, and, Tegan Knox being brought in, Bronson Reed getting victories, Nick Aldis coming in last night, which is another big, huge piece of news that I can't wait to talk about. And I think now, Triple H would feel perfectly comfortable pulling the trigger now that he's the only one that has to make these calls. And according to what we've heard, he is 99.9% in charge of all creative in WWE. And I don't think we have ever received better news as wrestling fans in the last 10 years than that. That is a big deal, a very, very big deal. We're going to be talking about that and how WWE is shaping up as they head into the fall. We got Crown Jewel, we have Survivor Series coming up, and then before you know it, it's Rumble time, and we're going to be talking about WrestleMania. So exciting days are ahead if you are a WWE fan, for sure. Exciting days ahead if you're a fan of professional wrestling in general as well, because lots of cool shit on the horizon for both companies. But right now, WWE is really, really going strong. And I think the news that we heard this week about Endeavor and Triple H and Vince McMahon just adds to the already growing momentum this company already has. And I think WrestleMania 40 could be shaping up to be one of their best ever. So I hope that it is. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Here's what we're doing. This weekend, you get me the next 3 days. We're going to be up here for about 2 hours discussing all of this shit today. Then tomorrow night, we will return for our classic pay-per-view watch-alongs. The rest of October will be all Halloween Havoc. So tomorrow night, normal time, Sunday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, we're going to be watching Halloween Havoc 1993. Link is up on my channel right now, so you can check that out. And the links to the next 2 Halloween Havocs are also up. The following week, a week from tomorrow, we are going to do Halloween Havoc 1994. Shit, how did I forget this already? I'm pretty sure Halloween Havoc 1994. And then the week after that, we're going to be doing Halloween Havoc 1999. So we've got some good ones coming up here for you. And of course, I have lost. There we go. 1994. Yes, 1994 will be a week from tomorrow, October 22nd. That is the big Hogan and Ric Flair cage match just a few months after Hulk Hogan came into the company. And then the final Sunday of October, 2 days before Halloween, we're going to watch Halloween Havoc 1999. And that will mean that we have watched every single Halloween Havoc except for, I believe, 92 and 2000. And I think there was one in 91. So we're only missing 3. I think Halloween Havoc is the pay-per-view that we've watched the most of either company, WWE or WCW. So join us for the rest of the month while we bust out a bunch of Halloween Havocs. And tomorrow's watch-along looks really fun because that card is stacked. And I'm excited to watch this 30-year-old show with you guys tomorrow, headlined by Cactus Jack and Vader. That's what's going to be on tap for tomorrow. And then on Monday after Raw, we'll be back at it again for another Winged Eagle because Monday is the season premiere of Raw, and we could see some major things go down. I hope that we do. Like I said, I'm just sitting here waiting for Damian Priest to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. I feel like he's a shoo-in to do that, but that might not come until after Crown Jewel, as now we already have Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins set up for that. So maybe it could just come in Saudi Arabia. Most likely it will, because I don't think LA Knight's going to be winning any championships at Crown Jewel. So they might just be saving it for that, but you never know. Could happen this Monday. We'll be here to talk about it. Let me say hello to everybody in the chat. Get the pleasantries out of the way, and then we will start with our wrestling news. But good to see everybody. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Good to see you, Tatanani. We got Nick Musser and my boy, K-Dog's Kennel, 14 months member. My God, cheers to another month of support. So much respect for you personally and professionally. Thank you for all your do and your content you provide. Kevin, it's always great. I got your little bub present right on my shelf right here. I look at it every day. Thank you so much for being such a great friend and a great supporter and fan of the channel. Love you, man. Good to see Ronnie. What's going on? Big move for you coming up pretty soon. Very excited for you. Mab is in the house as well. We got Isaac, Deshaun Robinson, rounding out some of the early channel members. I also want to say hi to Rodrigo and William Cullen, Richard Wells, Big J, Sonic Plays, Tony Kiran, Aaron Gothier, Gregorino, the Gregmeister, making copies. That's me. We've got Toro Hill, Decimania, Sonic Plays, Denny Down Bad is here as well. Gilbert, not sure if I got you. I'm really bad at remembering who I already shouted out 2 seconds ago. Red Raven Rucker. We have Ben Espinoza, Bonkers LFC, James Gerhart, Michael Merville. Good to see everybody. Happy weekend to you. Don't forget, smash that thumbs up. We are just a little bit over 300 subscribers away from 40,000 on the channel. So if you are not a subscriber, please help us out and get to that milestone. It's been a long time coming, but we're about to hit 40K. And hopefully next year we can hit 50K. We will see, one step at a time. Baby steps here on the channel. So thank you for being here. By the way, if you would like to support and become a member, you can do that in the description below. Also, there is some information down there about how to sponsor your own live review, things like that. All that crap is in the description if you want to support in any other way other than subscribing and giving me your like. But we have got a lot to talk about today, and I want to get it done as quickly as possible. We came up 30 minutes early today just to give myself some extra time because I need to be out of here by 4:30 local time, which is going to be 7:30 on the East Coast. So that just gives me about 2 hours to get my thoughts out on what has been a very busy week in professional wrestling. You guys have not seen me all week. I don't even think I was here Monday night. I wasn't even here Monday for a Winged Eagle. So I really haven't been here in podcast form all week long. We were here on Tuesday because I was very excited to do the big double watch along of NXT and AEW. The night before, this game of one-upsmanship between the two, every time WWE would do something, Tony Khan would respond and vice versa. NXT loads up their show with Cody Rhodes and John Cena and The Undertaker, who was kind of in a really silly little segment with Braun Breaker there at the end. But putting these legends, these megastars in the NXT environment was really cool to see. A lot of people were like, oh, WWE's scared and desperate. They're loading up their show. I don't think desperate is really the correct word to use there when it comes to WWE, but they definitely are flexing their muscles. And they say, hey, anytime a wrestling company or a different promotion or AEW wants to tread into our night, we're going to load up our show and say, give it your best shot, bitch. And that's exactly what they did. So we had NXT loading up the show with stars. Then we had Tony Khan doing the same thing, announcing a pretty nice looking card of wrestling, but really nothing different than you would see on any AEW Dynamite. Then NXT announces that they're going to go commercial free for the first 30 minutes. And then Tony Khan's like, okay, we're going to go commercial free too. Then Tony Khan secures a 10-minute overrun. NXT already routinely has about a 5 to 8 minute overrun. Then Tony Khan announces a buy-in, which had a Ring of Honor championship match on it with Eddie Kingston and Minoru Suzuki. So these are the type of things that I just love. I live for this shit. I'm like, come on, do it. Okay, your turn, NXT. What are you going to do? Like, let's just have a big old fun game with this. And let's see if we can have both of these companies load up their show as big as possible. And like I said before we even watched on Tuesday, I'm like, this is all AEW's house money here. This is WWE's show to lose. They have no excuse if they do lose, because NXT, without these legends, are pulling in great numbers. They've been in the high 700,000s, 800,000s in the ratings here for a few weeks and any time. And we've seen a lot of the main roster stars come into NXT, like Becky Lynch, who's the current NXT champion, Dominic, North American champion. We've seen Seth come in and work with Braun Breaker. They're starting to integrate some main roster talent into NXT, and they're doing it pretty well. I wasn't sure. I didn't really like how WWE couldn't decide what NXT's identity was going to be. I loved the black and gold, but AEW forming kind of ended that. So then when they turned it into the splashy paint, I still really don't watch NXT. I just can't really keep up with it. I don't have time. My life is way too busy. I got a real life and a job and a career and all that stuff on top of this. I have to sacrifice something. I don't watch Rampage, and I don't watch really NXT unless something really awesome is happening. Like we hear of a great match, or we got main roster people coming in, or somebody's creating buzz or getting over or something like that. Then I will pay attention. But for the most part, I'm not really watching, but they are still pulling in a decent amount of their fans, nearly close to just under 1 million viewers on a lot of those weeks. So without Cody, without Cena, without Undertaker, they should already pull in a decent number. And I think if they wouldn't have booked those stars, then the shows would have been much more even. But WWE has the ability, they have the power to do this, because they do have a roster that is so deep. They do have a roster across all of their brands that has a lot of talent on it that you can move around when need be, when a rating is needed to be popped. And that's exactly what they did here. Now, AEW and NXT went head to head. We watched them both. It was very fun. Seeing Cody in an NXT ring was just really hard for me, my brain, to kind of comprehend. It was so cool. So both shows were pretty entertaining from what we could see. And I was curious about what the ratings were going to do. And that was where I thought anything was possible. I kind of went back and forth on my ratings. Before WWE loaded up NXT, I predicted an AEW victory. But then as I saw what WWE was doing, I'm like, well, there's really no way they can lose now. They're on their own night. Just a week ago, NXT's numbers on its own on Tuesday basically beat AEW's on Wednesday, but there is an asterisk by that. But still, that was a pretty big deal. There was no way WWE could lose this show, especially since AEW is giving us kind of a typical Dynamite. We're getting, Adam Copeland's first match, but aside from that, we're not getting anything too terribly crazy. We've had some way wilder Dynamites in the past 4 years. So when they went head to head, it was like, well, it's definitely going to be an NXT victory. We know that, but how close is AEW going to come? I had an NXT victory predicted of about 150,000. I think I had them around 900,000 and AEW around 750. I was right on with NXT. NXT had about 920. I think I predicted 890. I was pretty close. NXT, I predicted about 750, and they only came in with 600,000. So this was a 300,000 viewer gap. The exact same thing in my live reaction that I said. I prefaced this by saying I could be wrong. I don't know. It's impossible to predict anything here. I just don't think we would see a 3,000 viewer, a 300,000 viewer gap between the two. But we did. Somebody on the video was like, oh, that literally aged well. I'm like, do you people not listen? I'm like, I'm the most diplomatic motherfucker you're going to find on this goddamn app. I prefaced my prediction with the belief that I do not know what I'm talking about. I have no idea what the ratings are going to do. I'm just taking a shot in the dark. I wasn't proclaiming this to be truth or fact or trying to proclaim that I know better than anybody else. I literally said, I have no idea what the ratings are going to do. I'm going to do my best to predict it. I think NXT is going to do 900. I think AEW is going to be 750, but I could be wrong. And then I was wrong, and then people like dunked on me for being wrong. I'm like, well, didn't I say that I didn't know if I was going to be right or not? Like, I don't understand why listening is hard, you know? So this isn't something that I found to be, I wasn't embarrassed by what I said. I stand by that 100%. I didn't know what the fuck the ratings were going to do. I was just hoping that it was close, competitive, to where, you know, kind of both companies could find victories, you know, in what they did. Even if NXT lost, even if AEW lost, I said that NXT has to have a big win. They need a win like 300,000 in order to consider that a victory. Because if they loaded up that show with everything they had, and then AEW came into their night, their established night, and then NXT just barely beat them, that's a victory for AEW, if you ask me. So NXT has to wipe the floor with them in order for this to be a real victory. They did. That was a shellacking. They took them to the woodshed, for sure. NXT walloped AEW by a pretty substantial margin. And I wouldn't necessarily say that was surprising, but that was going to get a lot of people talking the next day. One of the people who was talking a lot about that the next day was our friend, Tony Khan, who had lots to say. Poor guy, I swear, you know, I have differing opinions on Tony Khan. I will listen to any person like myself's critiques of Tony Khan. People who are adults, people in the community who I respect. You know, when people like that are critical of Tony Khan, I'm much more open to that type of criticism because I know it's coming from the mouths and the brains of adults, not by obsessed fucking lunatics who are completely consumed by hate and make that their entire identity. And Tony Khan, when I see his behavior the next day with his tweets and the way he's kind of lashing out and quite frankly, melting down a little bit, it's kind of eye-rolling and cringy. I'm like, bro, just, you know, take the L, live to fight another day. The behavior is reminiscent of how I used to criticize wrestling fans, like when John Cena or Charlotte would win another title. I always accused them of living too much in the moment. They get so mad, so infuriated, and they flip out so much that they act as if the very last match that they saw is the last thing that's ever going to happen. They are going to die with John Cena being world champion. There's never going to be another pay-per-view, no, not another Raw, SmackDown, nothing. John Cena and Charlotte are champions forever. That's the way they view things in their mind. Their anger goes so crazy that they don't realize if John Cena wins a title, he's going to lose it. You know, anytime he wins one, all that means is he's going to lose it to somebody. All that means is he's going to put somebody over, and somebody will take that belt from him. You just have to be patient. But young fans don't have patience. They have none. They have the attention span of a fucking gerbil. I've said it for years. And Tony Khan has got to have that same mentality. He's got to understand that. He's reminding me a lot of those kids who can't control their emotions, those kids that can't get a grip on the big picture. They live in the moment and nowhere else. Tony Khan is going to have a Dynamite next week. He's going to have a Collision in an hour and a half, 2 hours from now. AEW Collision airs. I haven't even looked at the card for that show, by the way. I should have. So the wrestling world will just keep on a spinning, Tony, regardless of what the ratings say. You're on the verge of a brand new TV deal, Warner Brothers Discovery. You're going to get your shit on a streaming platform somewhere at some point, hopefully Max or something. All of that is going to happen. AEW has some work to do in some certain areas, but when you think about all of the wrestling promotions in the entire world, this entire blue-green ball that's spinning around the sun, you're the second biggest. There's a lot of wrestling promotions out there. Think about it. Just write them all down and rank them. It's WWE number 1, AEW number 2, and New Japan number 3, and everybody else is below them. Everybody. So that's still a pretty good position to be in, you know. And I should at least acknowledge that Tony Khan was supportive of the crew. Like, he did thank the talent and the staff for a great Dynamite. He was proud of them and the show they put on. But the numbers and the ratings, I think, is what really got under his skin, and then he just started tweeting. Now, Tony Khan, of course, he's got a very large following, and he's got a large following of haters. Some people create accounts specifically dedicated to hating him and then call him weird. That's where we're at in this world. So I understand that he has to put up with a barrage of nonsense on a fucking hourly basis, but you have to be able to manage that better. You know, you come across like a spoiled kid when you tweet like this. Now, again, this isn't the worst behavior. All this behavior is to me by Tony Khan is embarrassing, is cringy. Bro, talk to a friend before you hit send on some of these tweets. That's it. That's his biggest offense in my mind, is just being a little bit embarrassing, a little too cringy, and he should maybe think before he posts things. These are the same type of problems that anybody who's young and, easily triggered will have. But you would think that billionaires and corporate CEOs and things like that should have a little bit more, I don't want to say thick skin, but just be a little bit more ability to absorb the nonsense, because just look at where you are. You're the figurehead of the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world. You got a humongous roster of great talent. Focus on that. Focus on that. You can compete and try to take WWE on and beat them in the ratings. But if you lose, don't melt down and try to find any little piece of victory you can. And that brings me to a couple of his tweets. And the big one that got the most eyes rolled was the one, and I didn't write it down verbatim, but basically the gist of his tweet, probably the one that made the most noise, was when he said, "This week, 2 decades-long rating streaks came to an end as neither John Cena nor The Undertaker were able to draw over 1 million viewers." It's the first time ever. It's a decades-long streak. John Cena and The Undertaker have never appeared on a WWE show ever that has drawn under 1 million viewers. Whatever you got to tell yourself, TK. I mean, if that's what helps you, fine. But that's really, really digging for a win when there just isn't one there. Because regardless of who was on the show, AEW being on the same night as NXT is going to put a dent in their ratings. That's just natural. That would happen if Taker and Cena weren't on the show. So basically what Tony is bragging about here is that, hey, I put my wrestling show that is successful, it doesn't have WWE numbers, but we do success. We have a cable TV, deal, and we're going to get it renewed, and we're going to have platforms for our content. We're not going anywhere. We're still doing good. So naturally, if you go on another night to any other wrestling company, you are going to affect their ratings. This is him trying to take a win. This is him being Captain Obvious, basically. I don't think, I suppose if AEW wasn't on Tuesday, if they never went head-to-head with NXT, then NXT wouldn't have brought in all those guys. But if they did, and they were, and they had, there was no head-to-head matchup that week, and they were unopposed on Tuesday, and you had John Cena, Undertaker, Cody, and Taylor Swift and Barack Obama all on the show, then yeah, they probably would draw over 1 million viewers. But this is not the W that you think it is, TK. It's that type of stuff that make me just roll my eyes. I'm like, he's younger than me. He's just still, you got to think. I just want to know where he is, like when he's having these meltdowns. Is he on his private jet, sitting in a comfortable leather chair, sipping 50-year-old scotch, getting a handy J from an intern? Or is he sitting naked on his bathroom floor, rocking back and forth and chewing on a towel? It could be either one of those scenarios. Whenever Tony Khan is tweeting and he sounds mad, I always want to think about where he is. He could be anywhere. He could be eating a beef and cheddar from Arby's, sitting in his bed, just rage tweeting in the middle of the night. You just don't know. And I think that's part of the fun. So when he says these things about Cena and Undertaker, it was just, it was like, I wish I worked there, and I wish I was sitting next to him at the time, because I would have been like, bro, don't tweet that. Don't tweet that. All this is going to do is draw the ire, raise the ire of everybody that already has a fuck ton of irrational hate for you. All this is going to do is fan the flames on their misery, because they're miserable people and they're unhappy in their lives. So they just direct that at everybody else. That's the way they are. I've never met one happy person that is obsessively enraged at the behavior of Tony Khan. This is only miserable people who act this way. So when Tony Khan does these things, it's just like, fucking A, dude. But he wasn't done. That was like one of the last things he did. Prior to NXT going live, he tweeted out a meme of bald asshole regarding, I guess, referring to Triple H and Shawn Michaels and me. I don't know what I did to get insulted here, Tony, but I appreciate the shout out, at least, I guess. He also kind of tweeted about Vince's misdeeds, kind of tweeted something alluding to the accusations and everything and the scandals going on with Vince, which that I have no problem with. No problem. I don't care who you are. If you want to drag Vince McMahon for the disgusting, gross piece of shit that he is, fine. The way people were coming out of the woodwork to defend Vince McMahon, I'm like, look, let's not be stupid here. I'm all for criticizing the behavior of Tony Khan. He's being pretty stupid right now, I ain't gonna lie. But for fuck's sake, for the sake of Mantar, please do not defend Vince McMahon. There is no worse look than that. You know, defending this sex pest, this corrupt fucking maniac that's literally believed he was bulletproof and could do whatever he wanted throughout life. Rules don't apply to him. Don't defend him. Don't defend him. You want to criticize Tony Khan for acting like a 14-year-old girl on social media? Fine. I'm right there with you. But let's not defend Vince McMahon. Spare me, please. And Meltzer claims that when Tony Khan tweeted what he tweeted about John Cena and The Undertaker, the WWE took that as a declaration of war, which I don't know if I'd take it that far. I just think it's a declaration of Tony saying, I can't handle a loss and I just don't know how to fucking manage my emotions. I need a PR team or something, or I need somebody around me to filter me out a little bit. I wouldn't really consider that a declaration of war, but that is what a lot of people have been warning Tony Khan about. One of the biggest phrases I see about this whole situation is poking the bear. Don't poke the bear. Don't poke the WWE, because then they'll come after you. They'll turn their sights to you. And that used to be the case. It might still be the case now, but you know, without Vince there being the number one person to make every decision now, decisions have to be made with the good of the TKO umbrella and Endeavor umbrella in mind, and you can't just on a whim just do whatever you want, like within reason. So if this is a declaration of war, what does WWE really need to do? You know, they're in the driver's seat. They're winning this war, at least right now. Wrestling has ebbs and flows. So all the fans that are tribal, that are, you know, whacking off at the success of WWE, don't get too excited, because we've seen, if the last 4 years have shown us anything, is that both companies have seen different periods of momentum falls and, you know, and surges. Both companies have. A couple years ago, it was looking like WWE was in the mud and AEW was only a couple of years from overtaking them, because WWE's storylines was shit. Everything they were doing was shit. Vince was in charge. It sucked. Even AEW was better at pandemic wrestling than WWE was. But then once that Wall Street Journal story broke and Vince was kind of pushed in the background, even though he tried to force his way back in once or twice, things have been progressively better for WWE ever since basically Cody signed. And they've been on the rise ever since. So don't get too excited, because as quickly as that happens, as quickly it can fall off. We've seen it happen plenty of times throughout WWE's history. I've been watching WWE for 40 plus years, and I've seen this happen a bunch of times to them. So if you think that, if you're living in the now, like I just criticized Tony Khan for doing, and you think that WWE's never going to have any more problems, then you're ignorant. So just enjoy wrestling. When WWE or AEW gets hot, enjoy it. Enjoy it, because who knows how long it's going to last. I'm feeling pretty good right now with what we're seeing from WWE. I'm feeling pretty good that we are, at the very least, going to be treated to some great wrestling between now and WrestleMania. I think everything WWE is going to do between now and WrestleMania is going to be phenomenal. And I also think, now that Vince is completely gone, or at least hopefully, as we'll talk about in a minute, that we might finally get the return of the Raw after Manias. Because that was the big one last year. You know, Vince's fingerprints were all over that Raw after Mania. And this year, maybe that's something that Triple H brings back. He really seems like he wants to bring these things back for us. So WWE doesn't need to consider what Tony Khan said an act of war, because what are you warring about? You know, what are you fighting over? If he wants to scream and yell at you, let him. Part of WWE's entire image has been not acknowledging their competition. That's been a staple of WWE for years, you know? Oh, but Tony Khan wasn't done, by the way. There was one more. He had one more tweet he had to say. This had to do with tampering and his mother. So he tweets out this yesterday, and I quote, "This weekend marks 1 year since the Mayo Clinic saved my mom's life. During her ordeal, many AEW talent came to me alleging WWE tampering, including them to break their contracts. I'll never forget these phone calls at her side in the hospital. It's when business became personal for me. Now, apparently, one of these phone calls that he got was from William Regal. One of these conversations he had while he was dealing with his mother's illness was with William Regal. He said he went outside to sit down and talk to Regal for a long time. They had a long, positive chat, and that's where Regal laid out the desire to go back to WWE so he can work and be near his son. And since Tony Khan was sitting at the bedside of his ill and possibly dying mother, he understood that, and he let Regal go. Maybe there is some thought that that was kind of a manipulative thing. And I know Swerve Strickland was one of the people that spoke up and said WWE tried to get me back. We know they've talked to Malachi Black and a few others. There's definitely stuff going on there with the tampering, for sure. That's indisputable. MLW has got a whole fucking lawsuit going on with WWE right now about this stuff, and Ring of Honor came very close to suing WWE for the same thing. WWE's got a long history of this. So WWE tampering with AEW's talent, Tony Khan has a reason to be pissed there. That is a tweet or, a statement that I can understand why he would be mad. But if you get your ass kicked in the ratings and then you tweet 16 times looking for some sort of a victory in there somewhere, that's where it makes you look bad. But I don't blame him at all if he's pissed, and he's been pissed for the past year about WWE trying to poach some of his talent. He's got every right to be pissed about that. WWE would have every right to be pissed at him if he went after theirs. So all's fair, right? By the way, I'm going to answer all these super chats in just a second. Thank you for those chiming in, like Spaz, like Deshaun, like Spaz, like Max, all that stuff. You guys are awesome. I'll be with you in a minute. So Tony Khan just had a rough one. He just had a rough one. I feel like, I already worry about Tony Khan having too much responsibility as it is. This is a billionaire that is handling all of creative. Now, I know he's not sitting at his dining room table by himself writing out TV. He might be. I'm sure he has people helping him, and he does allow the wrestlers freedom to kind of be themselves and their promos and things like that. But I do think, again, I don't know the exact structure back there, and I don't know the right or wrong way to do these things. But I really feel like Tony Khan, how Vince had that Pat Patterson and Briscoe and and Slaughter and Skoland and Gorilla, he had that little circle, Bruce. Tony needs that, he needs something like that, or he needs, somebody to really help him work out the creative stuff, because AEW always delivers great wrestling. But with the way the business has evolved and the athleticism around this world right now, it's not really hard to get great wrestling anywhere. What we've seen in recent years that has really worked is compelling stories and compelling characters. And that's one thing I think WWE has over AEW is they have great characters right now. There's been years where they haven't had great characters. They haven't had great stories either. But they're fresh off that hot bloodline story, which is still continuing. It's just kind of fallen off, although some of the visuals we got last night on Smackdown were great. But they have great characters. Roman, Cody, LA Knight, there's a lot of people in the company that are over, that the fans like, the fans enjoy, and that we no longer have to worry about being fucked over by the kooky old nutcase with the mustache. WWE's in great position right now. AEW needs to look at some of that. How can we build up somebody to be a star the way they made Cody? Or what can we get? MJF and Adam Cole. MJF, I think, is the one official and legitimate draw. I do think people will buy tickets to AEW shows to see him. I believe MJF is a draw, but it's going to take more than that. The Adam Cole and MJF storyline is great. I'm hoping that can kind of develop the same type of momentum that the Bloodline did. Maybe not on that scale, but be enough to really kind of carry and be the driving force behind AEW. You look at Toni Storm, the character that she's developing. More of this stuff is what you guys need, and you need less of the start and stops, what they did with Wardlow, cooling him off, what I'm worried they're going to do with Powerhouse Hobbs now after his Jericho squash, cooling him off. You got to stop doing shit like that. If Wardlow's back on the scene now, make him a big deal. Put Hobbs over finally, for fuck's sake, and build up these characters. Run to the moon with Toni Storm. She's the best woman you got there. And MJF and Adam Cole, run with that angle as long as you can, but don't make the mistake that WWE made with the Bloodline at SummerSlam. That type of stuff. So just focus on you. Dust yourself off. You don't worry about it. You're not going anywhere. So what? NXT whipped your ass. So what? You're still on TV. You're still pulling in good enough numbers. The fans might think your numbers suck because they're not what WCW had in 1998. but nobody's are, and the business is different. You don't watch wrestling just on TV anymore. WWE or AEW have never gotten a rating from me. I watch everything through streaming. No matter how many times I've turned on Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, or Collision, never once is my rating counted, ever. So a lot of people watch wrestling different ways. 600,000 people is not all AEW got. 900,000 is not all NXT got. They probably got close to double that, both of them, when you count all of the other different ways that fans watch the product, DVRs and streaming and all that crap. So I think all of that needs to take into consideration, and Tony Khan needs to just concentrate on himself, because there are things going on in the company right now that have potential. But when you distract yourself with worrying about this, that's, I think, when it can affect your product negatively. That was the problem I think TNA had. I gave him a lot of flack for that. I'm like, stop worrying about WWE. It's okay. I like competition. I like trading shots back and forth. I like when AEW does something to respond to WWE and vice versa. What I don't like is the obsessing, and the behavior of Tony Khan. I'm like, this is where it looks bad. It's fun for the fans when you trade little shots or things happen, or you might say something on commentary, or you might say something on social media. All of that I like, but when you tread into the obsessive, area to where it's tweet after tweet, and you're just clearly having a rough one. That's what I don't like. The friendly competition is fun. Competition in general is fun. People jumping ship back and forth is fun, but don't make it unfun. And I think Tony Khan made it unfun this week, because he took that loss way worse than he should have. Way worse than he should have. He just brushed himself out. One day we'll get him. We'll get him. Just keep working hard, put your head down, work hard, hustle, do what we do. We'll trust our fans to turn out. But that didn't happen here. He kind of went in the other direction with it. Now, I put up this was kind of a social experiment that I had. This is going to be our segue into what we're going to talk about with Vince McMahon. On Twitter yesterday, I put up a poll. Now, granted, this is a pretty small sample size, less than 300 votes on this thing, but I put up, who had a worse day? Tony Khan or Vince McMahon? And I put this up for a reason, because I wanted to see what the results would show. Because the funny thing about a poll like this is that it's really not an opinion poll. We know who had the worst week. But what was going to happen, people were going to vote on this poll based on who they disliked the most. And for some reason, Tony Khan is still more disliked than a corrupt, disgusting, sex pest asshole in Vince McMahon that has brought nothing good to the professional wrestling business in about 10 years. And Tony Khan won the poll. He had the worst week, according to my followers, with 64% of the vote. When you think about what we're about to talk about here with Vince McMahon and everything going on with him this week, there is no universe where a rational human being would look at the week that Tony Khan had and look at the week that Vince McMahon had and say that Tony Khan had a worse week. No universe does that exist. It only exists here because of the Tony Khan hate. And it was just an experiment. I wanted to test how bad the Tony Khan hate was, and I was proven right. I knew he was going to win that poll, even though there is no way that Tony Khan getting shellacked in the ratings and then tweeting for a day and a half about it was worse than what happened to Vince McMahon. What happened to Vince McMahon was way worse, and we'll talk about it here in just 1 second. Let me cruise to the chat, knock out some of these supers, and say hi to you guys. Thanks for listening to all that stuff. Good to see Deshaun Robinson. People forget NXT is the developmental brand. I mean, kind of. I mean, it is. It's used to develop talent, but these days when you have Becky Lynch as your champion and main roster people holding titles and John Cena and Undertaker coming in, I think it's becoming less of a developmental brand and just more of a third brand. But WWE really has struggled to identify what they want that brand to be. It's either going to be a third competing brand like it was a few years ago when Triple H brought the NXT troops to invade WWE and they participated in Survivor Series and Rumble and stuff like that. But then, they backtracked and now they're back to being developmental. And now they're kind of like this hybrid, which I don't mind either. I mean, it's fine with whatever they want to do. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're right. It's a developmental brand. And they were still, able to pull numbers like that. I don't think the numbers that AEW, even though Cena and Undertaker were there and drew less than 1 million, I don't consider that a bad number. Just like I don't consider 900,000 bad for AEW Dynamite. Not today, not in 2023, I don't. So I had no issue with their number, and I don't know why Tony Khan was looking for ways to tear that down. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Max Pokebra, after Cody and Jay won, I knew KO was going to SmackDown. Kevin Owens' name was tossed around a lot this week. I saw a few people call him out as the one to be traded. They were right. I got to give them credit. It made a lot of sense. Spaz Phoenix, appreciate the $10. I'm willing to admit my own NX over AEW bias, but after Tuesday, the feeling I got was just happy for the cool moments people got. Mellow Trick rubbing shoulders with Cena, Roxanne Asuka. The Roxanne Asuka match looked to be a really good match. Mellow and Trick with Cena. The only thing I did not like the Undertaker and Braun Breaker. It was just dumb, just silly. Why do that? But Cena, Mellow and Trick, all of that was great. I just didn't think Undertaker was necessary for any of that. And then him punking out Breaker or whatever. I guess it was cool, like backstage, a lot of that talent, who's coming up. Seeing him, that would be like, the equivalent of he's the modern day Andre the Giant. People are like Carmelo Hayes being able to be in the ring with him, and Undertaker raises his hand and points to him. That's pretty cool. So even though I thought Undertaker being there was silly, I was happy that the talent kind of got to have those interactions with them, and some of that on TV. And if Carmelo Hayes ever, when he goes into the Hall of Fame one day, same thing with Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker goes in the Hall of Fame 20 years from now, Undertaker will be dead. And he'll be talking about that night on NXT when, that was a teaching moment for him, and how he'll never forget the time that Undertaker gave him. He gave me his time. He taught me things. Even in that short little stint, that segment, he taught me stuff. Carmelo Hayes, same thing. So that's good for them. I was happy for them as well. Let me see who else. Deshaun's got 10 for me. Thank you for that, dude. I don't dislike or hate Tony, but his passive-aggressive crap needs to go. If Triple H did what he did, the IWC would destroy him. Promote your product and keep it pushing, or get off social media. I definitely think maybe he should take a social media break for sure. Or, it's kind of hard to say that because you're also, you're a promoter, and you want to promote your stuff. So you have to be on social media. Triple H has a burner account, I'm convinced, because he referenced Dominic's booze being piped in last night, but he just avoids melting down. And that's what happened. Like for myself, for example, every now and then I'll beef with somebody, but for the most part, I've learned my lessons with Twitter in the last 13 years. When I've developed a following and people, throw shade or come at me or troll me or something, years and years ago, I might have bit, and taken the bait. Now I'm like, I don't give a fuck what Johnny Fuckboy Bunch of Numbers thinks of me. Fuck you. I don't give a frosted mini wheat fuck what any of those people think. Could care less. I got a successful channel here. I have a great time. I have a great life, great job, great woman. I got nothing to complain about. And so I just don't look at it. Just don't listen to it. Delete them, block them, mute them, whatever. I do not care. I go right on with my day. I do not let that stuff consume me, because when that does consume you, it becomes stressful. And I think, Deshaun, that Tony Khan stresses himself out. And I don't even think what he's doing is really that passive-aggressive. I think it's aggressive. Now it is anyway. He's not mincing words at all. And he's certainly not being subtle about his issues with WWE, but he is in the position where he has no boss. Triple H can't go on a big social media tirade because, he's got people that are above him that might not appreciate that behavior. But when you're already at the top, you can kind of act and behave however you want. Vince McMahon thought the same thing, but instead of just going on Twitter rampages, he went on pussy rampages. There's a difference. So, but I don't disagree, Deshaun, with that take at all. Spaz has got 20 more. Not my typical plug, more a plug with a warning. But I did a hell of a pod on the Tuesday Night War talking about what happened on both shows, the NXT win. But I do get pretty passionate about a few controversial issues. Well, who doesn't these days? Spaz on social media, I get passionate every now and then as well. I have another point I want to make, but I got some more. Let me knock out these next 2 or 3 supers, and then I'll get to that point. Max Pokebra, appreciate the 5. Tony is right to be angry about WWE tampering, but that should have been a separate tweet. It should not have been included with his mother's recovery. I kind of agree, but I also don't think it's our place to tell somebody else what to tweet about their mother. His mother did live through that ordeal. I agree that it was weird, the way he was talking about his mother's life being saved and yelling at WWE in the same tweet, but that's not our mom. It's his mom. It's not our business. So, but yeah, if I was talking about my mom, Max, I would have that in a separate tweet for sure, but I'm not Tony. Tony's Tony. Rarely even. Thanks for that 5. They are overdoing this Cargill thing, Greg. No, they ain't. I get she's a big star, but once we see her, it won't feel as special now. No, disagree. Just flat out disagree with that completely, even though I love you. Rarely even. You got 10 more. My old job offered me my old job back for more money than my current job. It didn't end well when I left. A lot of animosity. It was very toxic, but I'm intrigued. What should I do? Good question. I've been in similar situations before. It just depends. That's going to be up to you. I don't know what it's like at your job in terms of animosity with who? With your bosses, with your coworkers? If you were to go back to that job, would it be stressful? And is the money that they're offering you enough to put up with that stress? That's what it's all about. Got to weigh the pros and the cons. I'm negotiating, my new rate for the next couple of years right now as we speak to at my job, and I'm just trying to think of what's worth my time. How much time am I worth, and what am I willing to do, that type of thing. And you got to weigh everything. And I wish you the best making that call, but don't put yourself in any situation that's going to stress you out, because that will kill you quicker than cigarettes and alcohol will. So just balance it. That's all. That's the only advice I can kind of give you on that one, rarely even. But another thing we should mention before we get into Vince McMahon is, Tony Khan's, behavior overall here is just what we've talked about. It was cringy. It was embarrassing. It was a little bit immature, and it was a little bit obsessive, and it was a little bit, childish. He shouldn't be, that hopped up over this stuff when he's in the position that he's in. But at the same time, I'm trying to offer fair criticisms, not biased ones. And to watch these people on social media, it's his behavior. I can't believe how he's behaving. And I don't mind seeing this stuff from a young person who started wrestling when DX was reformed in 2008 or whatever the fuck. What the hell do they know? But people my age who have such an issue with Tony Khan's behavior, I'm like, what is wrong with your brains? Imagine you're a Dia. Imagine, if you will, a 1995 through 1998 Eric Bischoff Twitter account. He would make Tony Khan look like Mother Teresa. There would be no comparison. None. Eric Bischoff waving his spray tan dick all over the place, sitting on Hogan's bus, cigar in his mouth, big sign with the Raw results written on it, and a hashtag suck it Vince, drinking a Miller Lite. Right on Hogan's bus, tweeting it, selfie. Is that the behavior of, what was his executive producer or whatever the hell his role is in WCW when he was kind of running things, signing the talent and booking TV and things like that? Imagine the behavior from him doing that. Imagine that. If that would have happened back then, because of the attitude in society, nobody probably really would have had a problem with it, except for people like me who were tribal. I carried the WWE flag. I was tribal. I still watched WCW. I didn't pretend they sucked, but between the two companies, I liked WWE better. But if Eric Bischoff's behavior used to drive me nuts, I'm like, what a little fucking prick. And that's why I laugh that he's so critical about Tony Khan. I'm like, bitch, you are 100 times worse. You were 100 times worse the way you booked TV. You had one idea, the NWO. Everything else was just nonsense. You had no creative integrity at all in anything you were doing. There was no cohesiveness. There was no nothing. It was just stars and people thrown out there. But the NWO was so hot, so cool, so over that, and you had the cruiserweights on top of that. And then you had, build guys like Goldberg and, on the side, and they just had the good package, but that was going to burn out. That wasn't going to last forever. And it did burn out. And, when all of that faded, WCW was left with the skeleton of, what they were, and that was nothing. And WWE whipped their ass. So to see Bischoff so critical of Tony Khan about how he books TV, I'm like, he's better than you. He just, his everything across the board that Tony Khan does, his behavior, the way he is backstage, the way he's liked and treated by his talent. Not everybody loves Tony Khan, but for the most part, the people who works for him like him. And he's got some good people there, like Adam Copeland, like Danielson, like Moxley. He's got a lot of big legends that don't seem to have the problem with him that all these fans with 14 followers who will never meet him seem to know about him. So think about Paul Heyman. What if Paul Heyman in 1997 had a Twitter? Imagine the profanity-laced tirades this guy would be going on. The two-faced nonsense that would be coming out of his mouth. how vulgar, loud, and two-faced he was about everything. Imagine him on social media. Imagine Vern Gagne on social media. He'd be so mad at Vince McMahon. He'd be mad about everything. He'd be bitching about the cartoony nature. Bill Watts would be bitching about the cartoony nature of wrestling now, and Vern Gagne would be so stuck in his old ways. I don't even think Jim Crockett could work a Twitter. Bischoff, we know how obnoxious he would be. Heyman, we know how obnoxious he would be. So let's not pretend that Tony Khan is worse or crazier or nuttier than any person in charge of any wrestling company that came before him. He's not even close. His biggest defense in my mind is the fact that he still seems to have the mentality on social media of a teenage girl. That needs to stop. He needs to get out of that mode. He'll grow. People grow up and mature. There will come a time when Tony Khan will look back at these tweets he sent this week and say, yeah, it was pretty stupid. It was pretty stupid. Happens to everybody. Everybody grows. Everybody matures. So I think one of the big knocks, I guess, on Tony Khan, he got all his money from his dad. Who fucking cares? Most people who are successful had a lot of opportunities and had feet in the door. Some people build their lives from the ground up, but some people have a foot in the door already. And with Tony Khan, I think the only negative to something like that is from growing up with rich parents is acting like a spoiled brat, which is kind of what he's doing. But really, he didn't follow any different career path than Stephanie McMahon did. He grew up with rich parents, went to college, got a Bachelor of Science degree, began working for their father right out of college, worked their way up to where they are now. In 2004, I think, Stephanie was like head of creative on Smackdown when she would have been 27 years old. Nobody was saying that she got all her money from her dad or anything like that. She worked her way up. She did this exact same thing Tony Khan did, except Tony Khan is just dealing with much more money than Stephanie. We saw the $1 billion princess come out on TV, the spoiled brat princess. I think we're seeing the $1 billion princess come out in Tony Khan on social media. So these maturity things, these learning, these lessons on social media to where you look back and you say, I don't want to get myself ever riled up or fired up like that again. I don't want to embarrass myself like that. I don't want to keep myself up thinking about tweets and shit like that. This is all stuff that I believe Tony Khan will learn in time. But when you already have a product that requires your 100% attention, this takes away from it. So that's where I think old TK needs to pull up his pants and just stop being a baby. Move on with your life. You got a very successful wrestling company at the end of the day that needs you sane for it to work. So stay sane. Let's talk about somebody who's not sane, Vince McMahon. This is great. This is great news, guys. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said who had the worst week, Tony Khan or Vince McMahon. Well, everybody's going to say Tony Khan just because they don't like him. But really, at the end of the day, Vince McMahon had the worst week. Sorry to tell you. He did. He's in the middle of it right now. I think Vince McMahon is currently undergoing one of the biggest blows to his ego that he's ever sustained in his life. And basically, this is all kind of stemming. There's a lot of things at play here, a lot of news going on around about Vince McMahon this week. But Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel spoke to Bloomberg Screen Time Conference this week. And he kind of, in a lot of what I'm not going to read you 4 paragraphs of transcripts here, but basically the gist of it is he kind of threw Vince McMahon under the bus a little bit by citing him as one of the 3 reasons why the stock price went down. A lot of it was the Smackdown deal too. Even more evidence here in what he said that basically is a pretty safe bet that Raw is not only leaving USA Network for sure, but it might even be moving nights in the future. That's kind of a scary prospect, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And a lot of people now are speculating that, Ari Emanuel basically just played Vince. And that's why sometimes I love karma, because the way this looks, and we don't know, but the way this looks is that it's possible that the plan right from the start of this merger was, once the merger happened, was to push Vince out and either get him out completely or make him a figurehead, just make him a statue in the background that can't do anything. And if indictments come out of this federal investigation that's currently underway, Vince will be out for sure. If he is charged with anything federally, that is going to be the end of Vince. And I believe that Endeavor has been laying the groundwork for that ever since and is in the process of laying the groundwork for this right now. Now, Sports Illustrated today, this was from Justin Barrasso, and I quote, "Multiple contacts within WWE and UFC have confirmed that Ari Emanuel, who wields power as the Endeavor CEO, is behind the change." Now, this change they're referring to is this creative change with Vince out, Triple H in. Goes on to say, Emanuel has long been a firm believer that in order for an organization to be as effective as possible, people need to do the job they are assigned. In this case, that approach has empowered Levesque to exert his full influence in the company's creative sphere. So it sounds like Ari Emanuel has basically, I don't know if he's directly told Vince or if it's been made clear to Vince that Triple H is the head of creative and you no longer can be phoning in changes. And with Triple H fully in charge of creative, we've seen things on TV that is evident of no Vince being around. Guys like Bronson Reed getting wins and getting a title shot. Tegan Knox was pulled from that match with Becky. That was the last time. I think that Tegan Knox match that was supposed to happen with Becky that got pulled for whatever reason, I think that was one of the last changes Vince McMahon will ever make to a show. That might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. That might have been what put Triple H over the edge. To say, get this fucking guy out of my life. Now, I don't know. That's just juicy speculation like it says right above my head, because that's all we do here is we speculate juicily. But that might have been it. And this is so great because Vince McMahon now is finally in a position to where he has a boss and he's not the final say. Wrestling fans who don't like to read and do the research and understand anything have always just believed that Vince can do whatever he wants. No, he can't. He can't do whatever he wants, especially now after the merger. And, when you look at the timeline of events over the past year or so, we had the scandal happen in 2022, right? That the Wall Street Journal broke that story. Vince then retired in the summertime. And then what happened? Things immediately got better. First pay-per-view we had was SummerSlam, and we get Io Sky and Dakota Kai coming back in the company. And Triple H is now there. He's going to be running things creatively. And we saw an immediate improvement. And then what happened? Last year, around the end of the year, around December, what did Vince do? He pushed his way back in, pulled that shady shit with the board of directors, and got himself back in the company under the positioning for a sale excuse, under the disguise of, I'm only here to pursue a sale. No, it was because he saw people doing his job better than him, and he wanted to get back in. And he forced his way back in. Stephanie got out of Dodge twice. She left when the scandal broke, then she came back when Vince retired, and then when he forced himself back in, she left again. Got as far away from that as she possibly could. Now, Vince is back in creative. He gave us that shitty Raw after Mania, and even though Triple H was still in charge of creative, Vince McMahon was backstage at Raw a couple of times, not every week, but a couple of times, and there was plenty of reports about him making changes remotely a couple of different Raws throughout this year. And it's been frustrating for the talent. The morale in the locker room has gone up and down, with Vince being back and then not being back, and just feels like everybody prefers Triple H. So then Vince is back. He basically came back, I believe, to search for a sale that would keep him in power. I think part of the reason why they never did sell to Disney, Disney's been rumored to maybe be a landing spot for WWE, but if that's the case, why wouldn't Disney just buy the whole damn package instead of having to worry about TV rights? It's probably because if Disney would have bought the company, there is no way. I forget the CEO of Disney, Bob whatever. There is no way he would keep Vince McMahon around. No way at all. I don't think Amazon or any other, major entity would want anything to do with Vince McMahon's involvement going forward. Vince was looking for the deal that would keep him in power. And he didn't really find it in a sale. He found it in a merger. And once that merger happened, that put other people in position to push him out now. If things like, for example, he's charged with anything in this federal investigation, and a lot of other things apparently behind the scenes are still going on with him, scandals and investigations and all of that stuff. Now with this merger, he's not going to be able to really veto anything. If they need him out, he's going to be out. And that groundwork is being laid as we speak. And it's incredibly exciting. I am so ready for this man to leave the professional wrestling business. I can't even put it into words. So now that Endeavor is backing Triple H has the support of the CEO of the parent company that they belong to. That's a great position for him to be in. And you can almost see it. You can see it in his demeanor. I popped like a 10-year-old kid last night when Charlotte and Jade came face to face and Triple H slid his grinning mug into frame. I'm just laughing. And it's like the minute he was given that control, it's like you saw immediately, boom, Tegan Knox on TV. Nick Aldis coming in, Bronson Reed winning matches, Gargano coming back. All this stuff that, is kind of evident to what Triple H likes to do. So he's got to be feeling really good. And don't forget, Vince still has all of these pending investigations. Vince has been a thorn in his own company's side for a long time. And there's been speculation ever since last year when all of this started that this was an inside job from the very beginning. What likely happened is somebody inside of WWE, like perhaps a board member, leaked the news of the investigation to the Wall Street Journal that got the ball rolling on all this stuff. And according to Fightful Select, the WWE roster is apparently thrilled, and the morale is very high right now in the company, knowing that the looming threat of him, because before, he was out, he was back in, we didn't foresee the way he was going to muscle his way back in the way he did last December. We really felt like he was out, but he was back in. And I said during all of this, it's a process. Vince McMahon is never going to just fade away. He's going to go out fighting, shooting, swinging, and he's going to go out kicking and screaming the whole way. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Even that night last summer when he retired, we knew that wasn't the end of it. We knew there was going to be a lot more steps to get him fully out of the picture. And we are down to like those final last couple of steps now, because Vince McMahon can always remain a figurehead. He can always remain, a statue, just a name that's there, that's attached to the company because it's been a family-owned business for so long. And Vince, from a business perspective, has nothing to do with the company, and certainly not a creative perspective. And I've always maintained that I don't really give a shit what Vince does in business meetings. Don't care. What I care about is him being at Gorilla with a headset on, making changes to a show or writing TV or anything like that. He is 20 years past the ability to do that. And he's been doing it for way too long, and WWE has suffered. And with him gone now, I feel like WWE might have the formula. What do you guys think? One of the biggest concerns I had with WWE selling, or years ago, when you think about the future and know that one day Vince McMahon is going to be gone, what's the company going to look like? Who's going to be running it? Who's going to own it? Is it going to be Stephanie and Triple H? I could probably live with that, but we really didn't know. And then when they became a publicly traded company, and as the years went by, you started realizing that the best avenue here is probably for WWE just to sell the company outright. And if they did that, it was immediately making me think of WCW. How WCW, once Ted Turner kind of had his merger, how everything crumbled, and then the parent company that owns WCW doesn't want anything to do with them. So my only hope was that whoever buys it, it's not a fucking mess like it was in WCW, and whoever owns WWE wants it to be a viable, successful business and doesn't look at it like the redheaded stepchild of all their other properties. And we may have found that here. This merger with UFC and TKO, the 1-2 punch of Nick Khan on the business end and Triple H on the creative end might be WWE's winning formula. I mean, this hopefully will be a formula that will be in place for this company for the next 20 years, because if something happened to Triple H tomorrow, then what do we do? Who fills those shoes? Bruce? God help us all. So the whole thing is still very fragile, but it was fragile with Vince, back in, 1998. If something would have happened to Vince, we would have been up Schitt's Creek. But now with Triple H, the company, the merger is complete. All the firings and the bullshit has happened. And I feel like we can start moving forward with this new WWE with Triple H being in charge of creative, Nick Khan being in charge of the business, the board of directors there to make whatever decisions they need to make on a daily basis, and Vince just standing in the background picking his nose. That's what I want. And it feels like we're getting closer and closer to that. And I really hope that whatever was found, Vince McMahon had his house raided. He had a federal search warrant issued to him. So whatever they found in his house or whatever they were looking for, whenever that comes out, if it's anything bad, then that will be the official demise of Vince McMahon in terms of us never having to worry about him being a factor in wrestling at all. And I feel like now we are about there. I feel like I've said this a couple times over the last couple of years. People have been so cynical. Vince could just work his way back. I'm like, you don't understand business if you think that. You got to stop thinking so black and white. Vince cannot do whatever he wants. And what are the crazy people going to think now? What's going to happen now? Because there's a whole herd of these people on social media that whenever no matter how minor, any questionable booking decision that happens in WWE, it's always Vince to them. Vince McMahon changed it because they just need an enemy. They don't know how to function without one. So Vince is the reason. Every single thing that we saw, Vince was the reason. Was Vince behind some of these? Probably. Was he behind all of them? No. But it's what angry people do. They just lash out and go to the very first thing that comes to their mind because they don't think. And what are they going to do now? Because Triple H, as much as I love him in charge of creative, and I think he's the best possible option for WWE, I think he's going to do a great job, but nobody's perfect. Triple H is going to do plenty of shit. He's already done it. That isn't going to be considered great or wonderful or perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But now you don't have your scapegoat. Now you're just going to have to admit that maybe Triple H just isn't perfect, and that's okay because nobody is. No wrestling promoter can be expected, or writer or booker can be expected to book shit perfectly. You rethink things. Some things are a mistake in hindsight. That is never going to go away. But there's a lot of needless, stupid shit that is going to go away without Vince being involved. And I think we're going to see a lot more, cohesiveness in the stories and a lot less stress behind the scenes in WWE with the threat of Vince looming, saying, okay, I'm going to write tonight's show. Let's hope the old man doesn't call up and say, no, I don't want to see Tegan Knox's face. Let's hope that doesn't happen. That should be largely evaporated now. That's gone. Bye, Mustache Man. Good riddance. So I will be very happy when the final shoe drops, whenever he is officially pushed out or whenever he's charged with something, and then Endeavor's going to have no choice but to cut ties with his ass. That's what I'm waiting for, and I think it's going to happen really soon. And I'm going to celebrate when it does because I do not like Vince McMahon. Just don't like him. Let's talk a little bit about our weekly CM Punk news. There have been a lot of CM Punk discussions lately as it pertains to his return to WWE. It was appearing to the fans that WWE was making all sorts of hints. Corey Graves dropped the usual suspects line. Shinsuke Nakamura hit somebody with a GTS last week. And I think there's been a couple of other references to that, to Punk as well. But apparently, this week we have had The Observer, House of Wrestling, and Fightful Select all weigh in on this. Now, earlier on in the week, the Observer and House of Wrestling alluded to possible talks between Punk and WWE. I think it was House of Wrestling that said that they were told that it's likely that he's going to be coming in. And then Fightful Select had a report a day or two ago that said the opposite. They said they were told by higher-ups in WWE, they were told by top talent that WWE wouldn't risk alienating by working them, that Punk was not in any talks with the company, and he wasn't coming into the company right now. So at least right now, there's no deal, there have been no talks, and there is no plans. So despite the clues and the references to Punk, there was speculation that that might just be people trying to get under Punk's skin. Corey Graves might have been specifically trying to piss CM Punk off. And maybe WWE has already kind of analyzed the risk reward here, because that's what it's all about. I would love to see Punk come back in and show up at Survivor Series in Chicago, the buzz that would create, but would that be worth it long term? They are not in a position right now where they need CM Punk. They're not in a position now where they need anybody. They didn't need Jade Cargill, but they had her. They got a chance to bring her in, so they did. But CM Punk, right when WWE is starting to hit the stride of good morale, Vince is gone and everybody's just riding high, do you want to bring him in? I've always been of the belief that CM Punk's problems will not be the same in WWE. He will be in check there, because one of the people that has been mentioned a few times as someone who Punk needs to hash something out with is Roman Reigns. And if I'm Roman, if I'm in Roman's shoes where I'm at, 3+ years as champion, I am legitimately bulletproof. If Punk came into the company, the very first thing I would do, I would walk right up to him and I would say, hey, Phil, just so you know, I eat you on the food chain. And that's the only way it is, and it's never going to be any different. It's the way it is. Never forget, I eat you. As long as you don't know that and understand, I would make that extremely clear to him on day one. None of your bullshit, none of your funny business, none of your attitude, none of your lash out, your profanity-laced tirades, none of that shit. If you do that, a bunch of guys in this locker room are going to hand your ass to you. And I think that CM Punk would be kept in check inside of that WWE machine. He wouldn't have the issues that he has in AEW, and I think Punk is willing to play ball, and he knows that if he has any chance to end his career the way he wants and doesn't have that lasting image of All In as his last time in wrestling, then it would be in his best interest to cooperate with whatever WWE wants to do with him. But maybe WWE sees this as a great chance it took 10 years, but to pay him back, get a little taste of karma back to CM Punk, because they have got a lot of things going for them right now in terms of the talent, the stars that are over. Bringing Punk in isn't really necessary. And maybe Triple H remembers everything. No, fuck him. We don't need him. Look how good we're doing. Let him, just twist in the wind outside of wrestling, and then, hell, maybe he'll go back to AEW. Maybe WWE feels like the initial buzz that Punk returning would create maybe wouldn't last or be worth it in the long term. I'm a wrestling fan, so it's not really my job to worry about the morale. That's WWE's job. If they think that Punk can come in and not be a destructive force in that locker room, then fuck yeah, I'm all for it. Because what do I care? Bring him in. If he becomes a problem, release his ass. Because it's not like AEW. Tony Khan did not want, it took everything for him to let CM Punk go, because he didn't want to, because Punk was that valuable to AEW. He's not going to bring that same value to WWE. Punk could come in and then leave, and WWE, their business wouldn't move at all. That's not really the case with AEW. He was a little bit more valuable to them, even though I think AEW can survive just fine without CM Punk. They made it sound like in the last couple of years that maybe they couldn't, the way Tony Khan was really willing to do whatever it took to keep him there. And it took Tony Khan's life being in danger for him to finally fire CM Punk. So we will see. I still think, despite the reports of this week, it's very possible that Punk comes in. And that doesn't mean that these journalists were lying to you. If Sean Ross Sapp says, hey, WWE told me they're not in talks with CM Punk right now, today's October 14th. What if on November 1st, they call CM Punk, a deal is made, and he shows up at Survivor Series? It's not a lie. It means that they weren't talking right now, but they could still talk in the future. So nothing that we learned this week was anything definitive on the future of CM Punk. It's just what we learned about what's going on right now, and everything changes from day to day. So right now, in October, WWE's got no plans and has not spoken to CM Punk. 2 weeks from now, we could hear a completely different story, to where maybe now there is some possibility of him coming into Chicago, but, for this story to come out, it's got to be WWE's way too. Like let's say if you're working in WWE and you know what's going on there, and there is no plans whatsoever to bring in CM Punk, that decision has been made. Triple H and Nick Khan have talked about it. They've discussed it with people, with talent, with Roman, with the board of directors. They've talked to whoever they need to talk to about bringing CM Punk in, and they decided that it wouldn't be a good idea to bring him in. So they're not going to bring him in. I would want to get that news out to the journalists and the dirt sheets, because I don't want a bunch of fans showing up in Chicago at Survivor Series expecting to see CM Punk, and we're giving them great War Games matches. By the way, War Games is confirmed to be a part of Survivor Series this year. They're kind of setting up for that last night, too, on SmackDown, I think. So I don't want a bunch of fans coming there and where all they care about is CM Punk, and they don't give a shit about the great War Games matches we're giving to them, because all they care about is CM Punk. So don't give them an unrealistic expectation and have them all show up in Chicago, like on the rampage of the CM Punk debut in AEW. Imagine if he didn't come out that night. United Center was sold out expecting to see him. So it's a smart move by WWE. If he's not coming in, let the journalists and the websites know that so they can get the news out there. Don't expect him to come in. Then if he does, it can just be a surprise. But there's no disappointment. It's better to do that. It's better to make everybody believe he's not going to be there and then he shows up than making everybody believe he is going to be there and then he doesn't show up. You know what I mean? So a lot of the little teases to him on TV, there was Fightful Select had mentioned that maybe some of this stuff wasn't even approved, just dudes going into business for themselves or trying to get buzz or whatever they're doing, or they might just be trying to pop themselves. Let's just go out there and have CM Punk references because we know this company ain't bringing him in. So we'll just go out there and reference him. Good way to troll him. Good way to pop us. Could just be all in good fun. We don't know. But it looks like CM Punk is not, at least right now, planned for a WWE return. And maybe, forget Chicago. WWE's in Chicago all the time. They're in Chicago a couple times a year. So there's no rush to have him come out at Survivor Series just because it's in Chicago. He'll have time to come back to Chicago. He already made his return in AEW in Chicago. I do not think you can top that moment that Punk had in the United Center on the night that he returned. That's unbeatable. That's like the Ric Flair retirement. That's like the Chris Jericho Raw debut. Can't be topped. So you don't need to do that again here in WWE. You could have Punk show up in the Royal Rumble. You can have Punk show up the night after Raw after WrestleMania. That's where I would do it. Have him come in then, like Brock did when he came back in 2012. Say, okay, Punk, we're going to let you come in, but we're not going to bring you in and give you Rumble victories and WrestleMania paydays. We're going to run through our WrestleMania season, then we'll bring you back in. And you can get Backlash money, but you ain't getting Mania money. That's what I would do if I was Triple H. You don't need him for WrestleMania season. Everything they got going on, you do not need him. But the night after Raw, finally a Raw after Mania that's not going to have a Vince McMahon influence, that's where you bring him back. Just like you brought back Brock when he came and attacked Cena after he lost to The Rock. Something like that would be great. That's where I would vote for CM Punk to come back. I'd make him wait. I'd keep him on the sidelines for a while, and then I'd bring him back in after WrestleMania. But coming back at the Royal Rumble too would be quite the pop, I think. Want to wish the best of luck to the Grizzled young veterans who are officially free agents. They released a really fun video on social media that was really well shot and well mic'd. And best of luck to them. I really enjoy them as a tag team and hope they find success wherever they go. Now we need to talk about last night's SmackDown. But before we do that, let me cruise over here to the chat, see what you guys have to say. I would really appreciate if you could help me get these likes up. Would love to get to at least 100 likes today. That might not come till tomorrow, but it would be nice if you guys could help me out with that. Let me see if there are any other major comments that I need to answer. There is. There's a bunch. Okay, so Rarely Even, you're following up on that super chat about your job. They're offering me $3 more per hour than my current. I loved my coworkers and my customers, but my boss and I never got along. She called me and basically implored me. It's nice to be wanted. So the boss that you didn't get along with was the one that called you? Well then, yeah, it might be worth it. But you know what? When something like that happens, I don't know what you do or what your job is. But when somebody comes for you, you're in the driver's seat. You've got the leverage. Say, I'll come back for $4.50 more an hour. Up it by 50%. Say, I'll come back for $4 more an hour. That's what I do. Ask for this and get this. Don't ask for this and get this, So, yeah, I would ask for more. Best of luck on that, Rarely Even. Rodrigo, thanks for the $2, my friend. Those are AEW haters. Listen to Bischoff and Cornette. No, I'm not going to listen to either one of those guys, Rodrigo. Why would I listen to them? They're fucking crazy. Cornette needs to stop like Bischoff. Let them say whatever. They've earned that. I might laugh and poke fun at Bischoff for being a fucking hypocrite with his critiques of Tony Khan, but he was the greatest Raw general manager of all time. And one thing that I have always appreciated about Bischoff is how he did grow and mature. I think Tony Khan is going to experience the same type of growth and maturity that Eric Bischoff did, because Eric Bischoff turned into somebody that I really liked listening to in later years. After WCW was dead and he came back and had his run as the Raw GM and then left. Any interview that I've always seen him on, he's got a lot of experience and history and experiences in the business and has a lot to say, a lot to offer. I always appreciated how Bischoff really turned me. I just thought he was the most arrogant little prick in the 90s, challenging Vince McMahon to matches at Slamboree and shit like that. I'm like, what a little fucking dork. But man, he really came around, and now, for the most part, other than his extremely hypocritical constant criticisms of Tony Khan, criticizing him of shit that Bischoff was a 10 times worse offender of, he does that every day, he still has earned the right to have that opinion, just like Jim Cornette has earned the right to have that opinion, no matter how much it's driven by keeping the army of, mouth-breathing lunatics, keeping his YouTube channel going. So they've earned it. They've got a long career in the business, and if anybody's earned the right to speak, it's them, and that's why I choose to not listen when they speak. Rarely Even has got 20 more. Thank you, dude. My idea for Randy's return, Randy Orton is another one who's rumored to be coming back anytime. RKO out of my idea for Randy's return, RKO out of nowhere leaves. Next week, same thing. Next week, same thing. No talking, just arrive. RKO, leave every week for over a month, and people will wonder what his motivation is. So you're talking about RKOing different people or the same person, but if he's coming in, RKOing random people every week, maybe that could be signs that he's going crazy or something like that. I don't know. As long, that's a good idea, but at some point, the people will have to learn what his motivation is. And so you need that idea. You can't just have him come out and start RKOing people without a payoff in mind. So whatever that motivation is going to be, if WWE's got a good idea for that, sure, bring him back. Bring him back for sure. But I think, I feel like WWE would just use him differently than that. But I like the idea, or I'm not against the idea anyway. Bob Iger, thank you. That's the Disney guy, right? Hey, I was right about the Bob part. Pretty impressive. I'm impressed with myself. Chris Ludek, appreciate the $5. Send me good vibes. The new job that I took 3 weeks ago just laid me off. Looks like I may have to stay in Orange County. That's a shame, Chris. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, you just got there, right? Best of luck with that, man. Always sorry to hear about that. That's a bummer. Max has got 5 more for me. Twitter should understand that it's possible to criticize Vince while crediting him with 80s and the Attitude Era. I guess. I don't think that's the thing. Nobody is going to... There's no reason to credit Vince with the 80s and the Attitude Era. He's already been credited. And Vince wasn't the reason for those 2 eras, but he was a big part of them. And I don't think anybody ever discredits the success that WWE saw in those 2 time periods. I never have. I don't even like Vince, but I've never once questioned how great WWE was during those time periods. It really has nothing to do with that. I don't think today, in 2023, crediting Vince for 80s and Attitude Era stuff is 25 years too late. He's already gotten that credit. We've given him the credit. He's got his flowers 10 times over. His current situation is what is the most newsworthy, because that's what is happening right now in his life. And basically, because he had success in the 80s or the Attitude Era, that shouldn't give him any sort of a pass at all in terms of how he behaves. So I think if you read or see a tweet criticizing Vince, that doesn't mean that the person criticizing him doesn't acknowledge or appreciate or understand the success that WWE's had during various times in its history. I don't think that's really it. I'll shit on Vince all the time for what he does now, but I'm not thinking anything different in my head about the 90s and the 80s. I loved the Vince and Austin feud. Even when Vince gets charged with the federal indictment and fucking goes to prison and all that, I will still enjoy watching him piss his pants and getting stunned by Stone Cold Steve Austin. I will always enjoy that. So I don't think that there's any sort of lack of credit, towards Vince. I think everybody understands the role that Vince played in the success of WWE. I don't really think that's in question, Max, but I guess I see what you're saying, but I don't really think that's an issue. I think people understand that. At least I do. Maybe other people don't. Maybe there are people who are a little crazier in their Vince critiques that now are starting to say things like, you never did that much. And that's kind of human nature to do that. You ever notice that whenever somebody, like when a comedian gets in trouble for pulling his dick out on a playground or something, all of a sudden, I never liked him. I never thought he was funny. I'm like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Stop trying to make yourself feel better. It's okay. You didn't know that he was a pervert. And it's okay that you laughed at his jokes then before he started drugging women and fucking them. But now that you know that, it's okay just to write him off. You don't have to pretend that you never liked him. It's like that weird pride. I took a lot of psychology in college, so I kind of understand this shit a little bit. I kind of know how people are and stuff. But it's like, no, it's okay. It's okay that you thought Bill Cosby was funny. It's okay. You don't have to act like you never liked him. There's nothing wrong with that, So I think with Vince, you might be right, Max. There might be some who are now saying, oh, and discredit his accomplishments, but I don't think that's a lot of people. I think for the most part, nobody disputes what Vince McMahon brought to the pro wrestling table ever. I never have, regardless of what he does now. All this time, I haven't even talked about Smackdown yet, man. We got to get into Smackdown after I read the super chat from Rarely Even, another $10. RKO everyone. Hell yeah, everyone. Talent, officials, on-air personalities, Kathy Kelly. Do not RKO Kathy Kelly. Anyone with a face. Then he can explain that the WWE forgot about him, so now he's going to make everybody forget them. Have him ruin big moments. I'm okay with that, but the motivation is going to be hard to sell. If Randy Orton says WWE forgot about him, how did they forget about him? Because he was injured and they didn't talk about him much while he was out? That's everybody who's injured. Everybody gets forgotten about to a degree. So I don't know if that would be enough. If the Randy Orton character would really be that offended that he didn't hear his name spoken enough on WWE TV while he was injured. Maybe if he was coming back as a very, very egotistical heel, that could work. I kind of like the idea of him RKOing everyone just because he's a little bit unstable, and maybe he's hearing voices in his head. That would be a cool way to bring him back too. Randy Orton might be brought back in a cool way. They might be doing something like that with him now that Triple H is fully back in charge, and since he's been working out in the PC, maybe they're waiting until they have the right thing for Randy to do. Instead of, he's healthy, let's just bring him back and then figure out shit for him to do later. No, don't bring him back until you have something for him to do. I feel like that's why it took so long to get Johnny Gargano back, because they needed to wait until the right time to put DIY back together. Now is the right time. Now he's back. So with Randy Orton, it could be the same thing. Let's talk about last night's Smackdown. This was a fun show, one of the best Smackdowns of the year, and I just loved it because of the moments. It was all about the moments here. It was the face-offs, the confrontations, the promos, the setting up for the future. Holy shit, man. What a show. I was laughing. I'm just like, it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm in this room by myself last night watching Smackdown, like marking out, yelling. I'm yelling in my own damn fucking house by myself. So anyway, John Cena last night opens up the show. We had Roman Reigns advertised for this thing, by the way. So Roman was going to be making his return to the season premiere of WWE SmackDown. So we get John Cena opening the show first. I'm almost starting to take Cena for granted. I'm almost getting used to seeing him on TV. You know what I mean? He's been back for a few weeks, couple of months now. It's been so great. And I got to remember, it's going to come to an end and he's going to leave again. But it's been really nice seeing him back. Seeing John Cena back in the WWE during a time when the fans aren't up his ass. I've been waiting for this for like 10 fucking years, just to have Cena here where he's not threatening any fans, where the fans aren't foaming at the mouth and shitting in their hands and throwing it on the screen because his music is playing with his little sirens. I think that having him here, just to be here, is so nice. Now, granted, WWE's calling him the greatest of all time, but I don't give a fuck. I don't care if they call him the greatest potato of all time. They call him whatever you want. They tried to sell us an empty arena Randy Orton and Edge match as the greatest wrestling match of all time. Fuck off. If there's one thing I've learned to not take seriously, it's WWE's catchphrases and buzzwords and taglines. I do not care what they call anybody, and I will never be offended by it because I don't care. So if they want to call John Cena the greatest of all time, let them. What's it to us? Whatever they need to tell themselves. Weren't we saying that to Tony Khan? Looking for that victory? Cena and Undertaker didn't draw 1 million views. Whatever you have to tell yourself, Tony Khan. So if WWE, if this is what they have to tell themselves about John Cena, I'm fine with it because John Cena was a big star for them. So what the hell do I care? Plus, he's been pretty humble during this run, which has been nice. So Cena comes out to the ring. He's in the ring. He doesn't even get a word out, and he's interrupted by the Bloodline. Solo, Roman, Jimmy. They come to the ring. No, I guess it's just Roman, Solo, and Heyman. That's who it is. There's just 3 of them. Jimmy's not there. Roman, Solo, Heyman come to the ring. And Roman and Cena back face to face. I was at SummerSlam in Vegas a couple years ago when they wrestled in the main event. And Roman says that the only reason Cena came back was because he was gone. Like basically he said, the only reason you're here is because I took my leave of absence. And I am the greatest of all time. So he kind of threw shade at John Cena for that tagline. And he says, you think you're going to come here. This is my show, whatever he said. And Cena said, look, I'm not here to challenge you, Roman, because I haven't earned it. But I know someone who has, and you knew it. We knew all week long when Roman was advertised for Smackdown that we were probably going to get an LA Knight and Roman Reigns confrontation. So after Cena says he knows someone who has earned it, LA Knight, here he comes out to his music, crowd pops. Such a great moment to see him come in the ring and get face to face with Roman Reigns. The reflection, the awesome reflection in LA Knight's glasses. You could see Roman Reigns. It was such an awesome camera shot. And I was like, oh, this is so great. Now, we kind of know what they're setting up here for. This is going to be our crown jewel match. This is going to be our crown jewel match, LA Knight versus Roman Reigns for the championship. LA Knight's not going to win the title at Crown Jewel. I don't see any way that can happen or any universe that will happen unless WWE really wants to just shake things up and pull the trigger on somebody. I don't see it happening, but I still think this match is awesome that they're setting it up. So we get LA Knight in Roman Reigns' face. You get the reflection in the glasses. And he said he's been doing a lot while Roman Reigns been sitting on his ass. He's the fastest rising SmackDown star in history. That's what he tells Roman when Roman's like, who do you think you are? I'll tell you who I am. I'm the fastest rising star in history. And he starts to really go in on Roman Reigns. And you can kind of see John Cena behind him reacting. I'm like, what the hell is Cena doing? He was trying to warn him because Jimmy Uso came in from behind and attacked LA Knight. And LA Knight immediately kicks his ass and disposes him and gets right back in Roman Reigns' face. John Cena is marking out through this whole thing. Holy shit. And basically, LA Knight challenges Roman. Like, come on, let's get it on right now. And Roman retreats. They start leaving. And as they're leaving, Roman looks to Solo and he goes, forget about Cena. Go deal with him. And Solo gets up on the ring apron, looks at LA Knight, and he goes, you and me tonight. And then LA Knight gets on the mic and says, hey, this guy just challenged me to a match. I accept. And they're going to be wrestling in the main event of Smackdown. Now, this whole entire thing was likely setting up what they're going to do at Crown Jewel in just a few weeks with Roman Reigns defending against LA Knight. Now, they did not announce the match here, but we're going to get that announcement either next week or just on social media prior to next Friday's Smackdown. That is definitely going to be our match. And I think that can be good. A lot of fans are worried. Don't put LA Knight in the ring for a title match if he's going to lose. Why not? Why not? Just the fact that LA Knight is in main event storyline is good. And there are ways to book championship matches without a guy being buried or being held down or momentum being killed or squashed. There's ways to book these matches and for LA Knight not to win the title, but still come out of this match pretty strong. I think this match is really going to help set up War Games, whatever goes on in War Games. I can't tell if we're going to get 2 matches I can't tell if it's going to be like Bloodline, Judgment Day, babyface thing, a three-way. I don't really know what they're doing, but it feels like the teams might be Jade, Jey Uso, Cody, Roman, LA Knight or something against the Bloodline, against the Judgment Day in a three-way fuckfest. I don't know. But something like that, I think, is going to help become set up at Crown Jewel. So I'm not too worried about the match. I don't think LA Knight is going to win the title. I'm okay with that. I like LA Knight. I do. I think he's over in all of that. And I love the response he gets. He is very entertaining. He's really not just my first choice to be champion right now. That's all. I really want to see Cody and Roman do their thing or something else happen. But I think whatever happens here at Crown Jewel, what I would do if I'm Triple H, book this match in a way to where if LA Knight loses, it still keeps him in a feud with the Bloodline. They go into Survivor Series. LA Knight has a big showing in the Rumble, perhaps. Who knows? Maybe he even gets himself into the WrestleMania 40 main event in a triple threat. Roman, Cody, LA Knight, something like that. A lot can happen. Or what happens here can just set him up to be champion next year or later this year. Seth Rollins could be a part of that. You know, maybe Rollins drops the belt to Priest and then LA Knight finds a way to get a title shot against Priest. Who knows? But I think LA Knight losing to Roman next month in Saudi Arabia, provided it's not booked as a squash where Roman just fucks him up, spears him, and pins him right in the middle in 5 seconds. As long as it's not that, I'm okay with LA Knight not winning the title here. I know a lot of fans won't be because they don't think macro, they think micro. But I don't think I just don't think you can put the belt on LA Knight right now. Unless you just really wanted to get nuts, you could, but I just don't think you need to. And you can probably book this match in a way to where LA Knight can still have his day in the future. Let's hope that happens. But just seeing Roman and LA Knight face-to-face in general was pretty damn cool. Pretty Deadly is back in action. My God, Elton Prince finally recovering from his long injury and a very inspirational rise from the wheelchair. Gets right up during his entrance. It's a miracle. He can walk again, even though it was his shoulder that was hurt. He's finally out of the wheelchair. They took on Butch and Ridge Holland and got the win. Elton Prince rolls up Ridge after he was basically faking a shoulder injury, and referee kind of checked on him. And then what's-his-face, Kit Wilson came in with a kick to Ridge's face, and Elton rolled him up for the win. Great to see Pretty Deadly back. Very, very inspirational moment coming out of the wheelchair. I love that. Carlito got attacked backstage. As I take a sip of water, I'm drinking out of a Post Malone cup from Cane's. Cheers. So Carlito's attacked backstage by Lashley and the Street Profits. So it looks like we're going to get some feud there with LWO and these guys. Bayley defeated Zelina Vega one-on-one. I think this match was set up backstage. Bayley beat her. After the match, Bayley and Io attack Zelina Vega, and Charlotte comes out to make the save. We'll talk about Charlotte in a minute. The next segment was awesome. Oh my God, this was so awesome. So we heard earlier on in the day, the spoilers were revealed on some of the websites that WWE had big plans for SmackDown. And we've heard that Nick Aldis was recently brought in as a tryout for maybe a producer role or whatever. And he's kind of been around, and they've likely signed him or are going to sign him. And then yesterday, prior to SmackDown airing, the reports were coming out that they planned on introducing Nick Aldis as an authority role on SmackDown. And that's exactly what happened. Triple H, he was advertised for the show to have a huge announcement. He was in the ring with Adam Pearce. And as he's about to make his announcement, Dominic comes out. So Dominic Mysterio comes to the ring. He starts bitching about Cody and Jay's tag match later on in the night against Theory and Waller, because Judgment Day apparently has a tag match booked on Raw, and he's just mad about that. So Triple H gets on the mic and says, "Boy, I thought they piped in these crowd boos, but holy shit, it's loud in here." So kind of referencing the fact that fans online talk about noise being piped in and stuff. So Triple H, he pays attention to social media, definitely has a burner account if I had to guess. The only difference with Triple H is he doesn't freak the fuck out when he gets mad. So that line about the booze was really funny. And Triple H says, look, from what I can gather, you're complaining about Jay and Cody's match because Judgment Day has a match on Monday, but this is Adam Pearce. You know, he's the general manager of Monday Night Raw. If you have a problem with a match that's happening tonight, you need to be talking to the general manager of SmackDown. And let me introduce him to you right now. And over by the timekeeper's table, I don't know how long he was standing there. Was anybody in attendance on the show? How long was Aldis standing there before Triple H brought him in the ring? But he didn't come out with a big entrance or music. He just walked right into the ring. It was great. Shook Triple H's hand, shook Adam Pearce's hand, and Nick introduces himself to Dominic. He goes, hi, Dominic, I'm a big fan of your dad's, and just kept on going with what he was doing. I love him in this role because he fits this part, does he not? Nick Aldis looks like he should be a wrestling authority role. I'm glad that Raw and SmackDown are back to having GMs. There have been times throughout wrestling history when authority figures were, they could be difficult sometimes. Like sometimes you didn't need them or didn't like them, or they were, the stories and the roles weren't written very well. But at the same time, they're kind of a necessary evil because as we've seen in AEW, sometimes, in WWE, sometimes you just have to announce shit, and having an authority role there to do it would be a big help when it comes to decision-making, stuff like that. Adam Pearce has done a great job doing that on both brands, but I have never liked him being the GM of both brands. I thought they should have two separate ones. And Pearce and Nick Aldis both have NWA ties and history with each other. Would be really cool if we got a Pearce and Nick Aldis match at some point in the future. Feels like they might set up for something like that, especially knowing that you might have some competition between these two GMs on the opposing shows and whatnot. So this is a really cool addition to me. I think this is awesome because now it gives SmackDown an authority role figure, and it's Nick Aldis, which is cool. Maybe Mickie James can join him in the company. Apparently she was pitched at one point to be a co-GM with him, and I guess they decided not to do that. Nick Aldis as the SmackDown GM, I think can work because he's somebody who looks the part and I think will be great at it. And of course, another thing that they had advertised for SmackDown was that we were going to learn who the person who was traded for Jey Uso was going to be. Or maybe they didn't advertise this. It was just, it was leaked. It was spoiled that they were going to announce who the person that Jey was traded for was going to be. And there was a lot of speculation during the week that it would be Kevin Owens, and it turned out to be Kevin Owens. And Dominic said, bring out whoever is traded to SmackDown. I'll smack him right in the face. And then Kevin Owens' music starts playing, and Dominic looks very worried. Owens gets in the ring, stuns Dominic immediately, and Owens is now a member of the SmackDown roster. So Owens and Zayn have now been broken up, and that's actually okay with me. I loved them as a team, but for me, I got what I wanted out of them. Those two guys, those two friends, being able to win the tag team championships in the main event of WrestleMania was awesome. Was awesome. I'm a little sad to see them split up this quickly, but I think it's going to play in to the Cody and the Bloodline and the Sammy dynamic a lot. And now Sammy will stay on Raw with Jey, and Owens is on SmackDown, maybe to start a completely different feud or program with somebody. We don't really know, but that was a pretty big trade. And now with Cody Rhodes being one half of the tag team champions, this gives him a reason to be on SmackDown as well, and hopefully he can still find, that road to WrestleMania. So backstage, after Nick Aldis is introduced, he's backstage talking with Piper Niven and Chelsea Green about something when Charlotte interrupts. And Nick Aldis agrees that at Fastlane, if it weren't for the referee being distracted, she would be the world champion right now. So he grants her a championship match next week against Io Sky. Charlotte one-on-one with Io Sky. She's going to win the title, isn't she? Ugh. So Nick Aldis isn't making friends right off the bat here, giving her a title shot, of course. So she will be getting a title shot next week. We'll see what happens there. And then as soon as she turns away, she turns and boom, Jade Cargill is right in Charlotte's face. And the two of them standing there looking at each other was so cool. And my favorite thing is the way Triple H kind of slid into frame there with that fucking grin. It was like, I don't, it's hard to explain, but like, if you think back to the way Triple H was like in 98 and DX 99, that little smirk he would have, just the way he slid into frame, he kind of had that look on his face. He reminded me briefly of how he used to be, like when he was younger and a little more silly. And he just had that look on his face. He's looking at Charlotte and he's looking at Jade. He's the shortest of all three of them, by the way, because they're in heels. So he's looking at the two of them and just watching him grin, watching them back and forth was so funny to me. And Jade goes, "Hi, and Charlotte goes, "Jade, I know who you are." And Jade's like, "It's a pleasure." And Charlotte's like, "It will be," and just like walks away. Women are so fucking catty. God. So anyway, she kind of gives her a little attitude and walks away. So we got that confrontation right off the bat. I don't think it's going to mean anything, because a lot of fans were like, holy shit, Jade came face to face with Charlotte. Charlotte could win the title next week from Io Sky and then cough it up to Jade, maybe. But I thought Jade was going to be on the Raw brand. I thought, wasn't she? Wasn't that where they said she was going to be? So maybe she's going to be on Raw this week too. Season premiere of Raw. Jade Cargill will be on the show. Maybe she will come face to face with somebody like a Rhea Ripley. Bianca's not on TV, but if she comes back, maybe Bianca. Who knows? But maybe we'll get the same thing out of Jade. So that was very cool just to see Jade and Charlotte together. They are making Jade seem like a big star because she should. She's probably got the best look of any wrestler, male or female, to ever compete in the wrestling ring. So she's got star potential. She's got star presence. And that's how WWE is presenting her. And we'll see how long it takes for her to actually get a match on the main roster, Raw or SmackDown or a pay-per-view, whenever that's going to be. I'm curious when she'll actually get in the ring and start mixing it up, and then she's going to have to sink or swim against these women. We'll see. And we'll see if they have any, big plans to smash her over and give her a title on the first night. I wouldn't do that if I was them, but they might. It just depends. But just cool to see her there in general. Interacting with Charlotte was pretty damn surreal to see and awesome. Then we get that tag team title match that Dom was so pissed off about. We get Cody and Jay defending against the douchebag express of Austin Theory and Grayson Spray Tan Waller, who I think hit number 4 and forgot to count Mississippi-lessly when he was doing a spray tan because he was all sorts of brown. Cody Rhodes and Jay won when Cody hit a crossroads on Theory for the win. But prior to that, Cody and Jay went for that little 1D move. It's kind of like a combination 1D Cody cutter thing. And it was not a good landing, kind of scary. Cody came awfully close to just completely annihilating his shoulder. And I think the last couple of executions on this move haven't gone well. Cody and Jay, please be careful. Don't do this move anymore if you can't execute it well, because it's already very difficult to pull it off as it is. And you run the risk of injury. And if either one of you get injured before WrestleMania, I'm going to cry, literally cry. So don't do that. As they leave after their win, after Cody pins Theory, Jay and Cody are leaving the ring. As they're leaving, the Bloodline comes out for, I believe, Solo Sikoa's match against Roman Reigns. Solo and Jimmy and Heyman come out to Solo, Heyman, and Jimmy, come out to go face-to-face with Jay and Cody as they're leaving. And then Roman comes out. So then you got Jay and Jimmy face-to-face, and then you got Cody and Roman face-to-face. And that image of the two of them together with Nick Aldis then coming into frame and going, gentlemen, not here. The way he's looking at Cody and Nick Aldis. A lot of history too, don't forget, with that NWA title. And looking at the two of them, kind of holding him back. That just image was stupendously fucking cool. That's what I put on Twitter last night. Just to see Cody staring at Roman, Aldis in the middle. Oh my God, that was just so awesome. That was just like a mark out moment for me. I'm like, that's so cool. They're reminding us, it's okay, guys, don't freak out. We haven't forgotten about Cody and Roman. We might get there again. A lot of fans took that as confirmation that that's going to be our WrestleMania 40 main event. I'm not going to go that crazy with it. It's probably going to be our WrestleMania 40 main event, but you might want to tweak some things. You might want to chuck an LA Knight or a Gunther into there and make that a triple threat to make the whole thing less predictable. It just depends. But that confrontation, that face-to-face told me Cody and Roman will battle again. And I think LA Knight is going to be the crown jewel match. And what Cody and Roman did and what they might do on SmackDown whenever Cody's there with the title and Roman is also there too with the tag team titles and Roman is also booked, they could have some other face-offs. But at this point, I think now we are back to that scenario where Cody Rhodes is going to have to win the Royal Rumble to get the shot at Roman Reigns or the Elimination Chamber or something like that to get that shot. But I feel like whoever wins the Rumble is the person that needs to challenge Roman Reigns. So if it's not going to be Cody, I don't know how they're going to do that, because I don't know how the winner of the Rumble doesn't challenge Roman Reigns, no matter who you are. Why would you go after the secondary title? Or why would you have to go after Seth's belt when knocking off Roman would be the biggest victory that you will ever see in your career? I would want to go after that. I would want to go after the opponent and the title and the champion that's going to bring me the most success if I beat him. So I'm almost feeling like WWE now is in a situation where they have to have Cody win the Rumble. Now he's going to win it back-to-back years. I think he should come in at number 1. And I think Gunther should be number 30. And you should do a repeat of last year. Maybe with Gunther winning, and then he goes to WrestleMania, and then maybe Cody worms his way in and makes it a triple threat, just like Danielson did back in 2014. I don't know. But I'm excited that they did LA Knight and Roman, and I'm excited that they did Cody and Roman. Those are going to be big matches in the next few months that are both going to happen, and it's going to be awesome. The main event was LA Knight one-on-one with Solo Sikoa. LA Knight beat him. BFT, FTW. Blunt force trauma for the win after the victory, which not too many people have beat Solo Sikoa clean, right? Who's beaten him? Cody and LA Knight, maybe one more person. I don't think many people have beaten this man clean. So LA Knight beating him is a big deal. After the match, he was speared by Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns stood over his body with the title, that whole deal. And yeah, that's going to be our crown jewel match. So SmackDown last night was tremendous. I loved the show. I loved the confrontations, just seeing all these different moments, combining that with the news we got about Vince McMahon most likely finally having no more influence ever on creative and the product we see on TV, and how much better things instantly feel once you have that information. Because I just don't know, would Vince have wanted someone like Nick Aldis to be the GM? He's boring looking, or all these stupid opinions that Vince has. I'm just glad he's not there to offer his 2 cents that are completely unneeded or unnecessary. Now Triple H can do what he thinks is best, and I trust the guy for the most part, even though I don't think he's going to be perfect. So this is exciting. SmackDown was great last night. Excellent show. Hopefully, tonight's AEW Collision will be all right. I did not check to see what we have on tap for that, so let's just take a look at that right now. Tonight on Collision, it looks like we've got oh, shit. I did not know any of this. Okay, we got a TNT Championship match with Christian Cage defending against Bryan Danielson. We're going to hear from Adam Copeland. He's on the show. We've got the new tag team champions, Big Bill and Ricky Starks. We're going to hear from them. Looks like we got the TBS title on the line as well. Chris Statlander defending against Sky Blue. So let's check out Sky Blue's demeanor tonight if she's a little bit less bubbly because of the Julia Hart stuff. We have Commander versus Brian Cage, and Samoa Joe defending his Ring of Honor TV title against Willie Mack. So 3 championship matches on tap for tonight on Collision. Looks pretty good. And Monday Night Raw on Monday should be a pretty good show as well, since they are touting it as the season premiere. So good stuff coming this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So just as a reminder, we're going to be back tomorrow night for our Halloween Havoc 1993 watch along. I'm really looking forward to watching that one with you guys, because I only think I've seen it once. And when I was reading through the card, I'm like, oh yeah, that one's going to be fun. So tune in tomorrow. It's going to be wild. And then, of course, Monday night, I think we're going to be back. We're going to have to come up here and talk about this season premiere of Monday Night Raw and what goes on there. So we will be back the next 2 nights. Let me cruise to the chat, see if there's any more questions, super chats I need to answer. And I am 2 minutes away just about from needing to sign off here. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for being here today. Looks like I did get all of the super chats. I hope I didn't forget any. Tony says it was the best season premiere ever for SmackDown. Yeah, it probably was. I can't remember any other ones, but I know they do sometimes advertise these as season premieres. I just wish that the Iron Sheik was alive to say, welcome to the season premiere of Go Fuck Yourself. Although Christian might have a trademark on that now. I'm not sure. Fun fact, Nick Aldis beat AJ Styles in 2014 on an episode of Impact in a title unification match. I might have known that. I'm glad I wasn't the only one, Isaac, noticing that shit-eating grin on Triple H's face. Just, I can't, some of the littlest things will pop me, and I have no idea why. Like, I can't even explain it, but I'm watching the clip with Charlotte and Jade, and I just wish I could reenact it. Like, Triple H, just the way he kind of slides in with his little grin, and he's kind of looking at the both of them. Cracked me up, popped me. Hysterical stuff. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Yachiro. Good to see you. Thanks for chiming in as well. Always good to see you here, my friend. Oh, wow. That's right, Juliet. Let's thank you for that comment, Juliet, because I forgot to mention that. Cody teased on Twitter that he made one last decision when he was guest NXT GM. The hope, or your hope, is that he was reinstalling Regal as NXT GM. Maybe that just has to do with whatever the terms are. From what we understood or we thought, he couldn't appear on TV for a particular amount of time, but I don't know what that particular amount of time was. Feels like he's been gone about a year now, but it might still be 2024. I thought maybe it was 2024, I thought I heard, until he could contractually, legally appear on television, part of the terms of his of Tony letting him go. But if Cody made one more decision, that would be the best decision ever. And how great would it be to be able to get William Regal on TV before Survivor Series so he can be the one to come out and say, blood and guts. Wait, I mean, the other one, War Games. War Games. Oh my God. If we get War Games out of Regal's mouth, I might not be able to contain myself. I might not. You've been warned. Anyway, I got to get out of here. I have to go to work. Work needs me. Because if I don't go there, I can't live in this house. So it's like a trade-off. I go work for them. They give me money. I take that money, give it to my landlord, and I get to live here. So it's like this cycle. Most people go through it, but that's what I got to go do now. So you guys have a great rest of your Saturday night. Join us tomorrow. Don't forget, for Halloween Havoc 1993 and whatever the hell the Sunday night football game is tomorrow, we'll have that on the wall and we will eyeball that as well. Have a great Saturday. Can't wait to hang out with y'all tomorrow.